Welcome to One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, where we get curious about what makes us tick. My guest this morning is an ambassador, author, consultant, and many other things. Welcome, Michelle Spaul.
Hi, Ian. It's good to see you.
You too. We've had so many conversations over the years, and it's so nice to actually now put this one on the record and share it as it will.
We better behave then.
Yeah, that's never happened on this podcast yet. So kick us off. For those who don't know, Michelle, tell us how you spend your time.
Well, my professional time I spend by helping businesses, in particular busy businesses, stop, think customer, and make more money as a result.
And what's the name of your business?
Well, it's Delta Swan Limited, but to be honest with you, it's me. I'm the brand. I don't expect people to be looking for Delta Swan particularly. I only market under my own name.
Great. And how long have you been doing that?
Well, I really decided I was going to focus on customer experience back in late 2019, and I was ready to go in February 2020.
Oh, yes.
But of course, this is not a COVID woe story, because actually what happened was I learnt that I wasn't ready to go.
Right.
I met lots of people. I discovered different things about myself, about the industry, about so many things that as a result, my whole practice is completely different to what it would have been if I had launched the way I thought I was going to launch.
Yeah. So tell us the story then. So how did you end up doing that?
Might use up the whole podcast.
Yeah.
So I studied manufacturing systems engineering at university, and one of the amazing things about doing that is you learn a bit of everything, and that pretty much sums me up. I want to know about everything. I want to do bits of everything. So when I finished manufacturing systems engineering, I got a job with Teaching Company Scheme working for Philips and the University of Brighton. And my project back in the early 90s is what we'd now call a Voice of the Customer project.
Right.
And throughout my career, I've always kind of looked back at that project and enjoyed it and really appreciated what I learned and what I achieved. After the project, I worked as a quality engineer, I worked in process management, I worked in purchasing, I moved from big company to big company, ended up at Rolls-Royce, did many different jobs there, and eventually realised that if I didn't make the leap, I was only ever going to experience working in big companies.
And if you go back and look at all the things that you did, even from the manufacturing systems engineering thing all the way through, what was the recurring theme? What was the thing that interested you all the way through?
It's been two things. It's been working out how to make things better. So making employment better for people, making businesses more profitable for their owners, making the experience better for customers. That's always been there. That three-way, let's make things better, has always been there. But I was thinking about this the other day. When I was at university in my final year, I wanted to take psychology as an option, and I was told I could only take it as an addition to my other things, and I knew I wouldn't have time to do it justice, so I didn't do it. And it was strange the other day, just suddenly remembering, oh yeah, I wanted to do psychology. Right. And the thing that triggered that thought was being at a birthday party for a 2-year-old and meeting friends of the parents who I hadn't seen for about 14 years. And one of them said to me, "You are so much happier now than you were when you were working at that place." And I said, "Wow, I am. I really am." And I think bringing the people back into what I do has been the key thing. So yeah, there's that bit that I always say, which is making things better, but it's the people part of that bit that's better.
So that, as you were saying that, I suppose the question that I've got again, around that area is, why is it that you think that you've got this drive to want to make things better? What's the reason that you think you're driven to want to do that? I
think I'm an idealist. I'm an optimistic person, and I want the world to be better. I don't think there's a. I think that is who I am. I've not sat on the psychiatrist's couch and explored why that might be, but I just have always wanted that. Life's nicer when things are better. Yeah,
I was interviewing someone a couple of weeks back, and he came up with a lovely phrase. Why don't people just be nice to each other?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Reminds me of that each time I observe behaviours on motorways and dual carriageways. From my position, usually sat on the inside lane listening to a good podcast, you observe other people and you think, why are you doing that? It's curious. So the other thing, as we go past that as well, you nearly did psychology. What was driving that?
I just wanted to know how people ticked. I found it interesting, but I find psychology... If I retire, my plan is to do another degree, and it was always kind of going to be economics. I was thinking it was economics because I like that mixture of the more transactionary type stuff, the strategic stuff, but the people side of it. But as time's gone on, I've started realising, well, it might be geology because I like rocks, but yeah, that memory of wanting psychology just again came back to me, and I think just every time I learn a different way of doing something, like I'm doing a course on coaching and mentoring at the moment, every time I learn a different thing, I learn more about myself and become more who I want to be, as well as helping other people. So I think it all just comes circling back to that in many respects. But I guess I do have quite a mechanical mind, so I like to have things that work.
Yes.
And making things better fits in both of those camps.
Yeah, and I suppose even with the human side, there is process there, isn't there? That you know, the way we operate, it is a process. It is engineering.
Well, you know, it's the whole systems one, systems two thinking. It's easy to, and I get quite annoyed with people who say people make emotional decisions as if that's a bad thing. What it is we have learnt responses, heuristics, biases that help us operate as humans, and understanding how people are using them helps us understand how to help those people or deliver a better service or make change. Yeah. So it's all kind of in there somehow, but I'm not sure I can quite put my finger on it. And I think it is difficult because a lot of people look at people with maybe an engineering background or process orientation, and they are dismissed for not being very people-centred, which I think is just really bad.
Well, it's. I mean, you know, bias has become a very popular and thrown around word now, isn't it? Which, you know, is effectively we've been programmed, if you will, to think that engineers are a serious, non-people person. Well, I don't think that's true.
No. It's just that they need different types of interactions, and they need to proffer different value to other people. Yeah. I mean, some of the best people I've ever worked with have been engineers. It's always good fun working with engineers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't, you know, I have to confess, you know, I did engineering.
Oh, it's all coming out now, isn't it? It's all coming out now.
You know, I'm you know, Institute of Mechanical Engineers, you know, went through all of that. But I think there's some parallel here is, I think what I realised going through certainly the corporate side of the career is I got more enjoyment out of the dealing with the people than I did of dealing with the maths.
Right, yeah.
So after you've done that then, tell me more about the gap, because you've done an awful lot of stuff in the gap between, you know, heading on that trajectory and doing what you do now, because there's lots of other things. I mean, well, we can go all sorts of places, but I mean, there's a book in there somewhere as well.
Yeah, so I actually started writing my book before I left Rolls-Royce, but I left Rolls-Royce with a good settlement, and it meant I could take time to think about what I wanted to do. And one of the things I wanted to do was finish the book. And the book is, I think the book reflects the way I think quite a lot, because what I wanted to do was tell a story. And it's a story about oil from the 1870s, further back where that's appropriate, but the 1870s where it became a really industrial industry rather than a almost cottage industry type thing. And looking at how it's changed our lives, how it's changed our society, how it's changed our culture, what it's enabled, and of course what it's destroyed in terms of the environment. And then looking at how we as a creative species can really think about how we want to move away from oil and the other fossil fuels, and finding so many amazing innovations. So you know, it was a very personal book. It ticks a lot of things for me. It ticks history, it ticks science, but there's a lot of strategy, a lot of thinking, lots of research into different innovations. And there's just so many ways that we could move away from oil if we just decided that was what we wanted to do.
So what would you hope that people would take away from the book?
Is it too corny to say inspiration? I don't mean that I've inspired them, but that they can look around them and feel inspired that there are so many people who are being innovative, being creative, being focused on making the world a better place by reducing carbon emissions, by reducing pollution, by reducing diversity destruction. If that's, I don't know if that's the right term, destruction of diversity. So it's, I just want people to kind of have their curiosity engaged and feel that we can do things. We can do things better. I can stop, and I think we've seen a lot since I wrote the book, like not having single-use plastics and other activities that are happening. And I think a lot of those small activities really do add up.
Yeah, because this whole subject area can be almost like, dare I use the term, rabbit caught in headlights. You know, it's we seem to be, you know, we get a lot of horror stories, doom and gloom stories, and I don't dismiss that it's a serious situation, but I suppose we just need to find a way of doing something slightly differently, slightly more clever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think danger of getting into politics here, but I think there's three parties involved in this. There are us all as individuals making the decision we're going to choose better things, and that's why it's really cool to see younger people making a lot of their decision making based on values. And, you know, and seeing stats like 35% of younger people choose where to buy based on the values of the organisation. So as individuals, we can drive a lot. Businesses, I think, have got a huge responsibility to deliver what people want, and I think government needs to enable it.
Yeah.
And so the book does finish on how can we get from rabbit in the headlights to actually doing something about it. I mean, obviously the disappointing thing is that we still haven't really moved that much.
It's interesting. So what kind of things did you sort of conclude towards the end of the book? How do we move from rabbit in headlights forward?
I think the biggest thing, and it's like anything, is making the decision. If we decide to move forward and research and look at all the innovation that's going on, there's already solutions for so much of our problems. And if we embrace those solutions, then we have more time, more money, more headspace for the more difficult subjects.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, we're going slight tangent here, but let's just dwell there for a minute. So, innovation and cleaning up emissions on vehicles, for example, and that kind of thing, and move to electric. There's an inconvenient fact here, isn't there, that there's just too many on the road?
There are, and there is going to be a thing where lifestyles change, but it should be lifestyles changing for the better. So we should have livable cities, livable towns, so people don't have to drive so much. We should have better infrastructure for public transport, so people don't have to hop into a car. It's quite funny. I actually got trolled on LinkedIn, which I think there were some people on LinkedIn during the COVID pandemic who didn't understand what the platform's for. And one of them, somebody had said, we're going to have peak oil this year, and I wrote, that's nonsense. As soon as COVID's over, it'll go back up. And some nasty people jumped on that. But I think we could have learned from what happened and did, and that's why working from home became such an exciting proposition. But we didn't think about how to make it work. So we got business leaders saying it's not working for us, and I can understand that. We've got people who want to work from home because it works for them, but those things have to be balanced. And we haven't stopped and thought about it, and we're kind of like that as a species. We don't stop and think about stuff.
I think we have very short memories as well.
Yeah.
We have very, very short memories. You know, we are, I mean, what are we in here? I had to think for a minute, 2023. You know, we are, 3 years on from probably the biggest disruptor that I think I will ever experience, I hope, in my lifetime. You know, for us to be, you know, told to stay away from each other. And I mean, I remember going for a walk here in the midst of lockdown. I've never heard it. I mean, we live in a quiet place, don't get me wrong, but on the top of the hill, you could always hear airplanes or traffic. It's interesting, isn't it? Good. So Yeah. I've begun reading the book, but I haven't got to the end of it yet. So I've got no spoilers there. So.
For you. But I think that thought process of mine is what I bring to customer experience.
Right.
Because a lot of businesses are faced with many things that they could improve, but they don't, because they don't have the time, they don't have the energy. Nobody's talking to them about customer experience management.
So tell me a bit about that. So what do we mean by customer experience management?
Okay, so it's a really long phrase, so I'm going to break all the cardinal rules. I'm going to call it CXM.
Okay.
Because customer experience management makes my mouth dry after I've said it 5 times. So CXM, when we do it CXM happens, whether we mean it to or not. We design our customer journeys, whether we mean to or not. CXM is the intentional design of customer journeys.
Okay.
And that means everything from when a customer first becomes aware of their need, because it's their journey, not our journey, from when they become aware of their need to the point where that need's satisfied.
Okay.
And businesses play a part in some or all of that journey, and many businesses play different parts. So customer experience management is recognising the customer and designing our journey to match the customer's journey, the customer's desired journey, and making our customers happier, because happier customers spend more and they tell people about us. And they're more likely to stick with us when times are tough. So we build business resilience. And that's all customer experience management is. There's a lot of people out there who talk about it almost as a moralistic thing. And I'd love people to be nice. We were talking about that before. Yeah. I'd love people to be nice, but the simple truth is most of us get out of bed with a different agenda. And I want it to be clear that customer experience management is a lever to achieving growth, resilience for businesses.
It's interesting, isn't it? We all experience the customer experience process on a daily basis, without maybe consciously thinking about it. When we go into a shop and we get a great experience, or you go into another one and they can't be bothered to spend any time talking to you.
Or you turn the TV on, or you boot up your computer, or you start using a camera. They're all customer experiences. And yet somehow there are people who, when they get to work, switch that empathy right off. Right. They just don't take it with them, they leave it at the door.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I do is about bringing that remembrance of what it is to be a customer, coupled with recognising that everybody's different. So I've had a brilliant earworm for the last few days. Etsy have got an ad where they're using a song and it's like, happiness is, and different things for different people.
Yeah.
And so long as we remember that, we need to respect our customers and fulfill their needs to be successful in business. And we remember that happiness is different things for different people. Where we get to is a much more successful business. So long as we balance it with being a successful business and looking after our employees. So for me, it comes back to those 3 things over and over and over again. It's make sure your business is a strong, resilient business. Make sure you're looking after your employees so that they stay, so that they build knowledge capital, so that they help you through difficult times, and make sure that you're meeting the needs of customers. And the successful businesses do all 3, and weaker businesses fall down on one or more of those.
It's interesting. Something that's close to my heart is the employee experience. And a couple of things on that. Recently, I heard someone say quite a powerful sentence, which was, we should realise that in a business, the only appreciating asset is actually the people.
I like that.
Because everything else goes down in value. And the more I've reflected on that over the last couple of weeks, you invest time, you invest in educating, you invest a lot in a new employee or a current employee, so they become an asset to the business.
Yeah.
Yet there are businesses, I don't think, who get that at all.
No.
And that plays straight out into the customer experience then, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. If you're not able to engage your employees, you can't engage your customers. It reflects immediately. If your employees are having a bad experience, your customers will have a bad experience. But I wanted to come back to that word asset, because You've got the people who just don't look after their people. And then I'm noticing people who really object to the word asset. So I love what you just said. I'm going to have to remember it. I'll have to watch the podcast. And what I've noticed is a lot of people saying we shouldn't talk about people as assets because they're not like tables and chairs. And I think that is just the wrong thing. People are our assets because they're the only thing that actually generates value in a business. And I love that idea of they're the only asset that increases in value.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So you might see that in one of my posts soon.
Excellent. Well, there was I won't mention the name of the airline, but a large American carrier posted a huge advert, I think it was in the New York Times, to say, we felt it was important to let all our customers know that we place you second.
Yes.
We placed our employees first because we think if we look after our employees, then you will get the best customer experience. And I thought, oh, this is deep. Now, that may well have been a clever marketing campaign, but if they were serious about it, which I hope they were, I think that's really, really true.
No, it's good. It's good. And I think you're right to worry about it potentially being a marketing campaign. I saw a TV ad last night, I think, where the whole voiceover, the narration was a bunch of customer experience jargon. And it just made me laugh because it was kind of like, if you have to tell somebody you're delivering a good experience, you might not be delivering a good experience. You know, it's like the polite notice signs. This is a polite notice. Probably not. This is a courtesy call. Absolutely not. You know, this is our design of your customer journey. No, because you would then recognise that actually your part in the customer journey is minuscule.
Yeah.
And then they don't care about you.
It's interesting, isn't it? So different experiences. I've travelled, not so much now, but different countries, and you get different experiences in this space. And you can't escape on your shopping journey having someone, when you've completed a transaction, say something like, have a great day, or, you know, and some people, you think, thanks.
Yeah.
Some people, you can't help because they scream at you with every other feature of their body that all they're doing actually is reading a script that they've been told you must say this.
Yeah, the incongruity is such an important thing. I think it happens a lot in call centres. You know, when you're on a phone call and somebody's being particularly unhelpful, it's a mixture of their script, it's a mixture of them, and then at the end they go, can I help you with anything else? Helping with the first thing was what I was looking for.
Yeah, and just while we're talking about putting stuff in Room 101, websites that ask you of your experience the minute you land on the website, rather than asking for you to have actually experienced it for a little bit first. You know, if you're one of those people programming that website, trust me, you're getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Ask me afterwards.
Or sending you a survey the day the day a package arrives about something that you actually need to use to be able to feed back on. There's a lot of very badly used tools. In fact, I'm writing about that at the moment. So I've got a series of posts on LinkedIn which I'm calling Hungering, which I've taken from a concept of Hungering is a UX term, and it talks about largely when businesses are so intent on using advertising for their income, search engines, that they actually destroy their own value. So you get to the point where people don't find searches helpful.
Right.
And the use of AI is making that even worse. So now what's happening is you get a pile of ads, you then get the AI answers, and then you get some websites. So businesses, because they're not being surfaced on searches, stop creating content. So the AI doesn't get fed, and so it all falls over. And you get this thing where you've got a self-destructive habit, but it's because you've got to have growth, and it's called hungering. And I'm using it to explore lots of intentional and non-intentional behaviours that then destroy the very value you think you're creating. Tell me
a bit more. Give me some context here.
Well, I think the one we just explored is a really, really good one where you say, well, we need to know what customers are thinking, therefore we'll do a survey. But we won't think about the customers when we design the survey. We'll just have this thing that says we've got to survey X number of people within 10 seconds of them buying the product or whatever. So you end up with kidding yourself that you're doing the right thing. Another example, which was in my post this week, was of a multi-billion-dollar organisation. And this is a muck-up over conspiracy type one. And that's where I come from most of the time. There are people who hunger on purpose, but I think most are by accident. And this was certainly by accident. They designed a checkout process. And in the checkout process, they put a registration, which they made mandatory.
Right. Because
the people who designed the checkout process genuinely believed that if people signed up and registered, it would make further checkouts much, much easier. But what actually happened was people, the first time I come in and they're going, oh, they just want my details, I'm going to get a load of spam, abandoned cart. And another group of people, returning customers, were going, I don't know how to log in. I can't remember my login. Which email did I use? And they were also abandoning their carts. A massive cart abandonment, and it was a UX team, did some research, spoke to customers to find out what customers thought about this registration, and they didn't turn it off, they made it optional.
Right.
They increased their number of customers by 45%. And I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was a 300 million, I remembered it, $300 million a year.
Wow.
And that, to me, is hungry, and it's where we take our beliefs that we know better, that we've been taught something and therefore it's right, and we don't look at the evidence around us. We don't even bring our own frustrations in from home, and we design something that turns the customer off. And I'm calling that hungering, and I've got a lot of great examples. I hope you can dip into my LinkedIn and have a look.
That's that whole area, I think, is, if you're trying to attract new customers or retain existing, I think this whole how a customer's made to feel, I think is important. Yeah. Well, I think it is for most people. I mean, I'm also making an assumption there because, for me, it matters. When I go to a supermarket, I would prefer to deal with a human. Now, I know I'm a bit of a dinosaur, but that's my preference. But I may not be the majority, I'm sure I'm not. But the fact that that's been considered, I think, is important, isn't it?
And that's exactly what it is. Happiness is different things to different people. When I go to the supermarket, I want to be in and out. I'm not at the supermarket because it's my hobby or how I've chosen to spend my day. I want to be in and out, and so I use the self-checkout.
Yeah.
But what I would love to see are more people on the shop floor that I could interact with when I've got a question, or who can interact with people who are maybe struggling a bit with the supermarket. Maybe, they've got a crying child or a husband who's limping or something like that. I think what we're doing is we're automating parts of it, and instead of using those people as assets in other part of the journey, we throw them on the scrap heap. And that, for me, is the downside to the behaviours we see around automation. And that's same, BT are going to get rid of all their call centres and we're all going to interact with chatbots. For me, that's probably the right thing for me as a customer, but it's the wrong thing for me as a stakeholder in society, because I would want to see BT improving their service. And I'm not picking on BT on purpose, just... I want to see them improving their service. I want to see them supporting more vulnerable customers better. I want to see them investing in their social outreach because, people in need can get cheaper Wi-Fi and so on. I want to see them reinvesting the money in those things. But it won't happen. It'll just turn into bigger dividends.
It's an interesting one, this, isn't it? And just thinking to what you're saying about, the customer service or automation, which doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's electronic, but automation can be, we're going to just put some people who look like they know what they're doing. Jane and I had an experience last week. We went to an exhibition at the NEC, and quite genuinely we needed some help. We needed some directions. Now, the NEC, you can't help but notice that it's a collection of halls around a massive lake. So there was a person wearing bright orange with a flag above them. I'm here to help.
Oh my word!
So we thought, oh, excellent. This is the person I need to talk to, which we did. And they'd got this laminated map in front of them as well of the hall. And we said, we're just trying to get back to car park that we were in. Gave them the car park number, and they said, oh, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I only really know about, is there anywhere I can point you to in the hall? I said, well, no, not really. I said, but, I said, okay, make it easy. Just tell me what's the quickest way to get to the lake. And she said, lake? What lake? And so there we've got people who, I'm here to help. So the perception then is, they've really looked after the customer here. But actually all they've done is to put some people with a T-shirt and a laminated map in place.
Yeah, but they probably absolutely genuinely said, a lot of complaints we get is people can't find their way around the hall. Let's solve that problem. And they didn't think about that wider journey.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And I mean, car parking should be on that list automatically. But if you're thinking within a very narrow aspect of your service rather than the journey, you can make those mistakes. But you know who do it really well? Hospitals. I mean, I don't know if you've had the misfortune to have to go into a hospital, but if we go into Derby Hospital, there's a big crossroads and there are volunteers on all 4 of the corners, and you can go up to them and go, I'm looking for such and such a place, and they really lean into you and they go, it's over there. They recognise that people in hospital are vulnerable, they recognise that people in hospital are stressed. They speak so nicely and they give you directions.
That's brilliant.
It's really good. And I think they've thought about the customer, not just that task.
Right.
And that, for me, is customer experience. And I'm involved in an organisation called Human Centred Experiences, which are amazing. And for me, it's always about just stop, think customer. Turn your perception of what's going on to the other person. And more than anything, stop being so arrogant. Stop believing that you're important to the customer. Because there's only a very, very small number of brands who are important. The rest of us, the rest of every single organisation is only important while we're interacting with the customer. And sometimes not even then. If you back to the hospital example, if you're in the hospital trying to visit somebody or have a blood test or whatever, it's not the hospital that's important to you. It's your stress, it's your anxiety about what's going on. It's the need to go and find your family member. And
the fact is, particularly in the hospital scenario, people actually probably don't actually want to be there.
Exactly. But even with your bread example, a synopsis of a customer I often use is busy mum, daughter's playing soccer with some friends. It's her rota turn to make the sandwiches. Drives to a supermarket. She wants to be in, out. She wants to find the bread. It needs to be a good price, and she needs to be able to get back home to make the sandwiches. And the sandwiches aren't even her value, so that she can then ensure that her daughter and her daughter's friends are looked after and fed well and so on. And yet we get really hung up on loyalty cards and things like that, things that make us as a brand important.
And slow the checkout process down.
Slow down the checkout process. And for me, that's more of that hungering thing. It's that thing where we just don't think customer, or if we do think customer, it's so narrow, like the great examples you raised. The lake thing's brilliant. But it's so narrow, we're not actually thinking customer, we're just thinking about ourselves and our interaction with the customer. And a lot of people call that inside-out thinking.
Right.
I'm not a great fan of the terminology because I think there's a lot of times we need inside-out thinking because we have to balance business.
Yeah.
But I think as a concept, it's vital. And my role and what I do is to help people switch their thought processes. I was talking with a client the other day, and I've got to be very careful. She's amazing. She's so customer focused, and she'd been having a reoccurring problem, and she dealt with it one way. Another customer came with that problem, and she got frustrated. Not in front of the customer, but she brought that out, and she said, I think this customer's just taking the mickey here. And I said, well, she might be, I don't know, but your job is to ask yourself what you want her to remember about her experience, and whether you want her to go away and recommend you, or if you want her to go away and badmouth you. So I get your frustration, but actually the right solution is the other solution.
Yeah.
And that for me is the important thing about unhungering. I don't know what the word is. I think that's why I still like the term customer satisfaction, because it's kind of got that. We've met their needs. We're not hungering. Yeah.
I think it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because and just hearing you describe it as well, that companies need to bring their personal experience from home into this, and I think that's quite smart, isn't it? We're all customers every day.
Yeah.
And we will often, we can all list times when we've been treated less than well, often seem to outweigh the ones who are being treated really, really well. But we then maybe fail to take that into business.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly right. We fail to take that into business, and then there's the second part, which is we fail to take that into business, but we mustn't assume that what we want is what those customers want. So we come back to do take your experiences in, but take them in and recognise that every single person around the room has got a different desire, let alone all your customers. Yeah. So that's quite important. Amazon have this thing where at the board table, I must admit, I don't know if they still do it after Jeff Bezos left, but they had a chair. And it was the customer chair.
Ooh, I like that.
And they would just say, would the customer want this? Would the customer like this? Oh. Now, ironically, and I think this really is important, ironically, Amazon have also recently been fined by the EU because of the way they sell Prime. And Prime, I think, is a really good example of hungering. And it's got quite a lot of connotations. To get to the point where you've been prosecuted by a governmental body suggests there's some decisions being made internally to support and carry on behaving the same way.
Right.
So even the businesses who are customer focused can trip up over a self-belief that they know what's appropriate in certain situations.
Yeah, we know what the customer should want.
Yes. Yeah, and to an extent we know how to get away with it, because I don't know about you, I've accidentally bought Prime. And then I've contacted them and said, look, you can see I've never used it. And they've gone, yeah, that's okay, we've cancelled it. And you go, okay, they've actually designed a process to cancel Prime? So for me, that's quite an important hungering story, because even the very, very good companies can get it wrong. And then we get into, it's not whether you make a mistake, it's how you deal with the mistake.
Yeah, and that's the thing we often remember, isn't it? How well we were treated in a non-standard experience. When something went wrong, how were we treated? I suppose that's the other thing, is we probably get loads of great customer experience every day because we don't notice it.
Yeah.
It's just easy.
Well, my process is understand your customers, meet their needs, earn a return on your revenue. I've got this brilliant quote. It's really funny. I heard it in the car and I went and looked it up straight away. Walt Whitman is a 19th century poet in America.
Right.
And he is actually credited with inventing PR.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's amazing what he did to promote himself and his poetry. Some of it definitely hungering. So don't get me wrong, I'm not admiring the man. But this quote is really cool, and it is, the public is a thick-hided beast. Sometimes you have to whack it so that they notice you. And it's absolutely brilliant quote. And that's why I have this earn part in my process, because we forget. When we have a good experience, we forget, because a good experience lets us get on with our lives. So I think the ultimate good experience lets people go back to where they were, a little bit higher because we've met a need, but goes back to where we were. But that means we have to remember them. And for me, that means customer experience management and marketing have to be such good allies.
Yeah. Yeah, so that you're promising something that you absolutely can and will deliver.
Yeah. And then when you've delivered it, you remind people you've delivered it.
I've got there's a couple more things I want to cover, and I'm conscious that we've been chatting for a long while already. You're involved with something called Lend with Care.
Oh yeah. It's a big passion of mine.
Okay, tell us a bit about that.
Well, I want to tell you a story. We say to young people when they're going to university or whatever, I've made you a care package.
Right.
That term comes from a charity called Care International, who was set up in the Second World War, and they sent care packages to basically destroyed Europe.
Okay.
And so Lend with Care is synonymous with a lot of us. It's like vacuum cleaner and Hoover. So I just think that's really important. I just want to throw that in. Lend with Care International support a lot of people through a lot of humanitarian work. They're an amazing organisation. But they realise that repairing things after they've gone wrong is not enough.
Right.
And they created Lend with Care, which is a subsidiary, so it's not a standalone charity, but it is part of Care International. And what Lend with Care do is, it's just really cool. Do you know what? I didn't know the Care International thing. I just thought it was a great title because it was lend people money with care.
Right.
But it goes back to Care International. But what Lend with Care do is they microfinance, so millions, it must be billions of people around the world cannot access finance.
Right.
They don't have bank accounts, they can't get loans to set up their businesses. So a lot of organisations, a lot of charitable, not-for-profit organisations, some for-profit organisations organise microfinance banking, which allows people to access money and access loans. But it needs capital behind it.
Yeah.
And that's where Lend with Care comes in. So Lend with Care organises the loans from people who can afford it to the people who need it to build up companies.
Brilliant.
And it's not a company in the very, very formal sense. It's often just a business. It could be a farm. It could be a shop, motorcycle repairers, so many different organisations who are providing employment, looking after their family, looking after children. There's a strong emphasis on helping female entrepreneurs because of the way they put the money back into society, into community. And Lend with Care lends the money through the micro financing organisations and then it gets paid back. So in my, I'm an angel, obviously. With my Lend with Care angel hat on, I have a Lend with Care account that I put money into. I then choose entrepreneurs who I lend the money to, and they repay it. And it goes back into my account. And then I lend it again. And then it comes back into my account. Then I lend it again. So the original sum of money that I could have just donated, instead of helping one person, is literally helping thousands. And because it's helping people make their own communities more resilient, the magnifier effect is not just with the repeated loans. The magnifier effect is the number of people supported. And there's some amazing statistics that I would have brought with me. But what I do as an ambassador is I go and speak to organisations and hopefully persuade them as organisations to support Lend with Care. And it actually creates communities in the UK. So on the 20th of November, speaking to the Burton Rotary and asking them as a club to set up an account where they use it as part of their social activity to choose entrepreneurs, lend the money, get the money back. Also, hopefully, some individuals will as well. So I probably speak with Lend with Care 2-3 times a year. There are 40-something ambassadors across the country, and anybody can ask for an ambassador to come and speak with them about what we do.
You must give us the links that we can put out with this. But if people want to find more about Lend with Care, where should they go?
Honestly, if you go into any browser and search Lend with Care, all one word, you will get to their website.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm going to bring it to a close with 2 questions.
No, not more.
Yeah. So the first one, in this second series of the podcast, second year, we've been asking guests to leave a question for a subsequent guest.
Oh.
So the question I have for you this morning from a previous guest is a fairly straightforward one, I think. What makes you laugh?
Funny stuff.
Okay.
Okay, if I go to the cinema, I very rarely laugh out loud. If I'm watching TV, I very rarely laugh out loud. But I was reading the back page of New Scientist the other day, and there was a corny joke, and I laughed.
Right.
I like nonsense. I like nonsense. I like silly things when things are unexpected and make me laugh. So I do watch quite a lot of stand-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like laughing. So my partner makes me laugh. I make him laugh. I think that's important.
Yeah.
I know when I'm mentoring, I perhaps overuse laughter as a tool. It's on my list of things to observe in myself. But when I'm in workshops, I like to make sure people are laughing and having a good time. And I use that kind of patterns and juxtapositions for laughter.
Fantastic. Great answer.
I didn't know I had it in me.
Yeah. Thank you. And my final question is one which we ask every guest. And it is, Michelle, assume we can conquer time travel. And you could write the younger you a letter for them to find. Knowing what you know now, what would you write?
I wouldn't do that. I like science fiction and I believe in paradoxes. I think if I wrote the younger me a letter, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Oh, okay.
And so I wouldn't do it.
So would you leave them a blank letter?
No, I wouldn't. That would be even that could change time. You know.
Right.
Oh, yeah, the whole butterfly effect. No, if you invented time travel, what I really want to do is get a little capsule, a TARDIS say, sit in the solar system and watch the world be created from space junk. And watch the water arrive and watch life evolve and just see that probably on quite fast forward, given that it's 4 billion years. But that's what I do with time travel.
That's amazing. That is the most left of field answer I think I've ever had to that question. That's brilliant. Michelle, thank you so much. It's been a joy to have the conversation with you. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Ian. It's been really good.
Thank you. So you have been listening to One Thought at a Time and our guest this week, Michelle Spaul. So if you have been, thanks for listening.